Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Issa Down. I am a self-taught watercolor artist and have become an educator to other burgeoning watercolor artists, having taught to thousands of students over the last few years, whether online, in my classes, in person, or through my book, Inking Florals. And today I'm going to be sharing with you a video that actually comes from a full-length class on my Skillshare page called Exploring Watercolors. It was such an important lesson that I wanted to share it here as well to give all of you guys a little bit more access into a little more in-depth. So this is going to be part 1 of 2, and we are going to be learning how to paint these buttercups. Painting these buttercups utilizes a lot of different skills in layering and understanding depth, different techniques, wet on wet technique, wet on dry technique, and the different effects that you can get understanding the watercolor and your paper, whether it's too wet, whether it's too dry, how everything kind of mixes together and what that looks like. So I'm really excited to share this with you. Because I feel like this is one of those lessons from this full-length class where we kind of dove into all these different techniques. So this is part 1 of 2 for buttercups. So let's go ahead and get started. So next up, we are going to be doing the buttercup. And I am going to be using a cadmium yellow and probably a lemon yellow, primarily as the yellows in my page. And I'm just gonna use some fresh, clean water on this wide brush that I have here to put a thin layer on the page. I don't wanna oversaturate it, but just to have a little bit of wetness on the page. Then I'm gonna come in with some lemon yellow and just fill in the background. So I wanna have lemon yellow as the way background. It's that kind of first layer. Applying that in the wet on wet technique. And then I'm gonna come in with my round brush and grab some cadmium yellow, which is this more warm golden yellow that you see here on my dish. And I'm just gonna kind of start laying that in different areas on the page while the paint is still wet. So we're gonna have a couple different hues, a couple different colors here on the page, and kind of start varying how things are saturated on the page. And then I might come in with some little more lemon yellow just to add it here and there. Okay, now at this point, I may also come in with a very light green. And I have kind of a yellowy green that I'm going to use, and I might just start doing a couple lines for where some of my buttercups might be. And I'm just doing very on the tip, just really loose, holding it up higher on my brush so I have less control over my paint lines, just to kind of create those lines that are going to be the stems of my buttercups. They do not have to be very precise. They do not have to be specific. If you feel like you put down too much paint, you can just come in and kind of blend it in with the background, because everything is still wet, right? And so it is also going to, as they dry, these lines that you've created on top of the wet paint and the wet paper are going to kind of ooze out a little and spread out a little. And so it'll still be very dreamy in the background. You can see here some of the lines in the background are very light as we start building up this combination wet on wet, wet on dry painting. Okay, and then I'm gonna come in with a lighter yellow, like a lemon yellow. If you don't have multiple colors of yellow, that's okay, because you can also change, you could add like a dash of green to whatever yellow you have, like just the smidgest amount of green, if it's a lighter green, and kind of mix that together. Or you can just not come in with as much on your brush. You can really water it down with water. It really is not imperative that you use 2 different yellows. I just want to demonstrate this more easily to you all. So now I'm going to come in while it's still quite wet, and I'm just going to start kind of creating general shapes of the buttercups in the background, right? So buttercups have 5 to 6, 2, 3, 5. They have 5. They have 5 petals that come around, and some of them might be on their side. Some of them are going to be, maybe we don't see them all. But you can just come in and make sure you have a good amount of water on your brush, because you don't want to come in and do it like a really detailed. But we're just going to create sort of areas that we might have buttercups in the background. And the idea with this is that the whole page gets to be filled with this buttercup, right? It's like a buttercup field. It's like you're lying on your stomach in the grass and looking forward through this dense field of buttercups before you. And so some of them will be up higher, some of them will be down lower, and I'm really just very loosely holding my brush up higher and kind of coming midway up in the body of this round brush to get a little bit more mark on the page, as opposed to coming in with just the tips for the stems. And I might just start doing a couple little leaves. Again, I can add more water to my brush, and that's going to help with that sort of dreamy, ethereal background feel that we're building. It's way too much, so I'm just coming in with some water. Just kind of get rid of that. And as we're painting these layers, it's also drying in between our painting time. Now, if you want it to dry a little bit more as we're going along, if you decide, hey, you know what, I think I'm ready to start doing like more specific detailed flowers, then by all means stop, pause the video, and go ahead and start adding those in after your page has dried a little bit more. I'm gonna come and start doing some cadmium yellow, which is a slightly darker yellow. If you only have one yellow, this is when, if it's more of that like lemony yellow, this is when you could add maybe a little dash of orange or a tiny little bit of red, just to warm it up a little bit. And you can see some areas are still much wetter than other areas. So that's when you're gonna get these areas that are just a lot more dreamy throughout. And then as things dry, you're going to be able to add the much more detailed look. And let me show you on this page here. I am taking the body of my brush and just kind of blobbing it in a circle. I know blobbing it is not a technical term, but that's what I'm doing, as opposed to coming in at, you know, from a sharper angle and just doing the tip of it. I'm just kind of coming down a little shallow and just kind of, still very light pressure, and just kind of doing it in almost like a C to create this shape of the buttercup, which is very round. And then I'm just gonna start building it and just keep kind of painting these circle areas. And so the flowers in the background, you know, in real life perspective, what's in front of us is going to be bigger than what's behind us, right? In this instant, I was making the background flowers bigger than I actually want the foreground flowers to be, because they were still really wet, and I know they're going to kind of disperse. So I was sort of facilitating their dispersion. You see here, like they kind of all meld together, and I wanted to make sure I could still kind of get the shape. So I'm gonna make it a little bigger, so as it disperses, it's still kind of maintaining its shape. And then since it's all kind of mixed together in the background, we can't really tell as we come forward that our perspective is maybe off a little bit in here. Like you can't really tell that this flower is, you know, twice the size of this one. It just kind of adds to that look that we have, and helps add to our perspective. So at this point, I'm just coming in with my warmer yellow, my cadmium yellow, and I'm just kind of adding some flowers. Some of them, you know, maybe they're on their side, so we don't see all of it, you know, like this one. They don't all have to be round with 5 around it. You know, you can like imitate this shape if you want. Pick a shape in your reference, look up another reference, and just kind of start looking at the shapes of the different flowers. All right, so at this point, my page is quite full of yellow flowers, and I want to start bringing in a green for the stems and the leaves. But I still want to be very light, so I'm coming in with a brighter green than I had before, less of a yellowy green. And that just depends on how you mix or the colors that you have. I want you to feel like you can use what you have. But I'm just going to come and just very loose start kind of finding areas where I can put some of these stems. And I want them to have some nice curves to them, so I'm coming from the base, center base of most of these flowers, and then just kind of pulling down, whether it's going directly through something or stopping and going around. And I will also start doing that with some leaves, but I want my leaves to still be pretty loose, so I'm going to come in with quite a bit of water. And I'll just start making those shapes that we've been working on with the lighter touch, pushing down and then lifting up. And if you're not putting things exactly where I'm putting things, that's great. I want you to kind of get into the feel of this. This is one of the most fun ways I think there is to create. This is the like zone where I start getting really happy about painting, where I can start adding different elements together. Some of them, you know, are going to be really clear. Some of them are going to be less clear. And how do I kind of make that happen, right? So for me, this is almost like a meditative thing here. So take your time. If you need to pause the video, if I'm distracting, go ahead and pause the video and just kind of create. And when you get to sort of this point where the page is pretty full, then we're gonna let it dry. At this point, we have blobby ethereal areas. We have more specific outlines starting to appear. And from here, we're going to really make the foreground flowers pop. So once you get to this point, we will rejoin after this has dried. I hope you guys have enjoyed this part 1 of 2 of the Buttercups tutorial. Keep an eye out for part 2. Make sure you've subscribed to my YouTube channel, and I will see you in the next tutorial for part 2 of Buttercups.